Welcome to the Chaos Sector. We follow up with our investigation into the Idaho murders case. Let's review what we know so far. There were 4 college students who had been stabbed to death early Sunday morning, approximately around 4:30 a.m. 2 roommates had survived, with one giving her accounts of what unfolded that night. Dylan Mortensen told authorities what she witnessed, which to be honest, has caused many to raise their eyebrows. While the other survivor, Bethany Funk, to our knowledge, hasn't spoke to the authorities yet. Perhaps she has, we will look into it. But let's address a few things before we dig deeper. Based on our redaction, it would be at least 2 people who were aware of the home invader. But, the problems still exist, regarding Kernodle on the 2nd floor, instead of the 3rd. Reports based on forensics of her cell phone data suggest that Kernodle was awake around 4 a.m. And also, she apparently anticipated a delivery from DoorDash as well. Mortensen claims to have heard Gonzalez state, quote, "There's someone here." Now, in the previous episode, I explained why it was likely it was Gonzalez who stated this, assuming Gonzalez was on the 2nd floor with Mortensen. We can scratch that entire analysis out, except for a few key issues. Kernodle being on the 2nd floor with her boyfriend, and Mortensen as well, still has the same scenario likely to play out. With Kernodle being awake, waiting for a DoorDash delivery, isn't it likely that she would wake her boyfriend up? If not for the food, certainly if she had heard someone in the home, right? Now it's even more of an oddity, with Kernodle being on the 2nd floor with her boyfriend, with Mortensen also aware of a home invader. If you were awake, and your boyfriend was asleep in your bedroom, and you became aware of a stranger in your home, wouldn't you wake your boyfriend up? Most definitely, no doubt. Based on Mortensen's accounts, Ethan was apparently asleep during this activity. She never heard a physical struggle, such as 2 male voices, along with Kernodle's cries. There is no mention of Ethan by Mortensen, so we assume he was asleep. It would be Kernodle who was aware of someone in the home, and it was also Kernodle who was heard crying at some point later, and the suspect's voice was also heard. This would mean that Kernodle somehow never notified her boyfriend that someone was in the home, and that someone eventually arrived in their bedroom, and this is when Kernodle is heard crying? This is not adding up. The reason we know that this someone is a stranger is due to no relativity to anyone in the home. It's not a friend, because that friend would have either texted or called, notifying their peers they are headed over. So since it's a stranger, then this stranger has literally invaded the home. And this is why Kernodle was concerned, because she became aware of a stranger in the home. We calculate this is around 4 a.m., somewhere between the time Kernodle was on TikTok and waiting for a DoorDash delivery. But who would Kernodle be communicating with about this potential danger? Was she thinking out loud? Well, that's a very loud thought for Mortensen to hear it, right? And we can assume that her bedroom door was open, due to Mortensen hearing it when she opened her door. Was she communicating with individuals on TikTok? Nevertheless, if Kernodle was aware, and we assume, alarmed, that a stranger was in the home, did she notify her boyfriend about this potential danger? It simply doesn't add up. Mortensen claims to have opened her door a total of 3 times. The first time, she claimed to have heard Gonzalez on the 3rd floor, playing with her dog. The second time, she claims to have heard someone state, "There's someone here." Then the 3rd time, she claims to have heard someone crying, and a man's voice state, "It's okay, I'm here to help you." Then, she claims to have heard cries once more. Now this would be Kernodle both heard stating, "There's someone here," and heard crying twice. Within this scenario, did the suspect sneak up on Kernodle? Where is Ethan at this point? Is he already dead? The problem here is the suspect would have to get past the boyfriend to get to Kernodle. Why? Because Kernodle would wake her boyfriend up about this home invader, right? If she hadn't woken Ethan up, what scenario is this? Ethan was the only male in the home, so why wouldn't she wake that male up, as a defense against a home invader? This scenario is highly unlikely. Yet, since there is no mention of Ethan being involved in any interaction, vocal or physical, from Mortensen's accounts, we assume this is the case. I don't believe it though, which indicates that there is information being left out of Mortensen's accounts of what happened. And that does not sit well with me. I know this may seem a bit insensitive to some, but you have both Mortensen and Kernodle not notifying anyone about this home invader? Despite being young college students, the danger that presented itself instinctively would drive you to notify the authorities. Now that I think about it, Kernodle was just as irresponsible, because she became aware of the suspect first and didn't notify her boyfriend? I know many may think it's cruel to criticize someone who was a victim, but her behavior and decision-making was just as suspicious as Mortenson's if we go based on the narrative that she didn't notify her boyfriend. Now if she did notify her boyfriend, then we are still missing key information from Mortenson. Why? Because there is no question that Ethan would engage with the suspect, which would lead to a physical struggle, something that Mortenson never claimed to have happened. Without any accounts of Ethan fighting the suspect, it seems he was still asleep or had been killed. But he was in the same bedroom as Kernodle, right? This is why there has to be information left out of Mortenson's accounts, because we have to believe that Kernodle notified her boyfriend about the suspect in the home. The problem, though, is whatever transpired during that time frame has been kept secret by the authorities. Because there is no question Ethan was awake by that time. We are simply trying to untangle the chain of events. If Ethan is now aware of a home invader, along with his girlfriend and Mortenson, it's virtually impossible for there to only be two roommates walk out of a burning building. In other words, the suspect will more than likely retreat after being outnumbered. Ethan would be the muscle, while Kernodle calls the cops, and Mortenson yells to wake everybody up. Even if the suspect did manage to stab someone, or even kill one of them, he would simply be outnumbered and decides to leave before the cops get there. Although the majority of the peers were females, there were enough of them to discourage the suspect from continuing to attack, based on possibly being overwhelmed due to strength in numbers. It's not like he had a gun, where he could control the setting a bit more. He had one knife, which can only be effective up close. So the element of multiple individuals evading knife attacks, and others still physically capable of attacking the suspect themselves, would lead to the suspect losing the advantage with that weapon. And someone would definitely be calling the authorities while this all took place. So, as a result, the suspect escapes, before either being killed himself, or before the cops could track him down in a short amount of time. We all understand that these are young college students, and perhaps they have never faced such danger. But we only examine what was provided by the witness. Mortenson locked herself in her bedroom, which is activating survival mode in face of potential danger. That is where the conflict comes about. I don't criticize her locking herself in the bedroom, that was a smart move. But it does become a problem when you don't take that moment of safety to call the authorities. And to make matters worse, Mortenson apparently went to sleep after encountering such danger? What the? We only deal with logic here. If you witnessed a man dressed in all black with a mask covering his face walk past you and leave your home, how could you go to sleep? You need to protect your home, right? Notify other roommates, right? It's really putting her accounts of what happened into a very, very sticky corner. A few more questions to ponder. What was Kernodle crying about? Was the dog asleep? Had her boyfriend Ethan been killed already? For the suspect to state, "It's okay, I'm here to help you," what would he mean by that if he apparently had murdered her boyfriend and eventually ended up murdering her? And, in this setting, Kernodle must have been one of the victims that had defensive wounds, right? Remember, the news reported that some of the victims had defensive wounds. It would have to be Kernodle, because she was awake and had encountered the suspect. Yet, there was no DNA of the suspect found on Kernodle in her autopsy examination. The suspect spots Mortenson and simply spares her and leaves the home? Why would a killer leave witnesses? What would be the point of disguising yourself if you don't have the same concern about making sure nobody can possibly identify you? Meaning, a witness. It's not like you merely committed a robbery, you stabbed 4 human beings to death, and there was someone else left behind that you walked past. The more information released, ironically leads to more confusion. Let's go over a few key factors. More than one person was aware of the suspect in the home. Despite our correction of who was where in the home, 2 people were aware of a potential danger. Mortenson, and we now believe Kernodle, who would be on the 2nd floor. Kernodle allegedly did not notify her boyfriend Ethan. This does not add up to me, and I'm assuming many would agree based on the circumstance. But apparently, he was either dead already, or still asleep despite his girlfriend aware of a stranger in the home. Also, based on Mortenson's accounts, apparently Gonzalez was also awake, due to her claim of believing she heard Gonzalez playing with the dog. Although it's not confirmed that she was awake, what indication other than hearing the dog would Mortenson assume Gonzalez was awake? Remember, the report claims that Mortenson stated that, quote, "It sounded like Gonzalez was playing with her dog in one of the upstairs bedrooms," unquote. If this would be true, then now you have at least 3 people awake. And, a dog is physically awake, that is also important. The point here, the more people who were awake, compromises the narrative of victims being stabbed to death in their sleep, right? Bethany Funk was allegedly asleep on the first floor. Being on the first floor, alone, I find it hard to believe she was asleep throughout this entire time frame. Perhaps she was asleep due to being drunk prior, but you are on the first floor, which is the main floor of the home. It would be a bit difficult to sleep consistently on a floor by yourself, in my opinion. Everyone else shared a floor, 3 people on the second floor, and 2 people on the third. Being the only person on the first floor naturally would create a bit of, well, loneliness. If not lonely, a feeling of being detached from everyone else. Which could lead to curiosity. The suspect decides to leave Mortensen as a witness. Honestly, this doesn't add up neither. What if Mortensen had immediately called the authorities after the suspect departed? He would eventually be tracked down, due to his vehicle being spotted in surveillance. Also, it wouldn't have taken over a month to do so, right? So it just doesn't make sense from a killer's perspective. No communication via emergency text within the peer group. Once again, this doesn't add up. Mortensen in particular wasn't compelled to check to see if her peers were safe, despite the danger they all experienced. What do you make of that? I got a feeling it's a bit fishy to you. And to top it all, no call to authorities until 8 hours later. If we combine all of the aforementioned factors and come to a decision being made, none of the survivors felt the need to notify the authorities until 8 hours later? Just based on what you experienced earlier that night, the authorities should have been called. So, it seems there is a lot of information, and even evidence, missing in this case. This is what we're here to dig into. There was an error in examining the article previously, regarding the floors of each victim. But I want to thank that viewer for pointing it out, because it only led to improving this analysis. Hypothetically, the prosecution may be able to convict, but there is ruffling in the bushes. In other words, there is suspicion on their side, which only provides a trail to truth. This is the chaos sector. We will return with more.